Hello again. I know I've talked before about the COVID business, but things are now getting so bizarre that I cannot help but wonder if I'm losing my mind. Let me start by reminding everybody we are still in a state of emergency about the epidemic which is raging across Britain. I wanted to visit a charity shop on Saturday and was compelled to wait outside because there were already 5 people in the shop and the staff were worried that any more and they would be creating a deadly health hazard. Later on that day I visited a small provincial museum and after walking around a little wished to go back to look at something I had already seen. A member of staff stopped me and told me in a shocked voice I couldn't just walk around in any old house. If I wanted to go back and look at the other exhibit I'd already seen, I would have to go all the way round the gallery because there was a strict one-way system in place. That meant that to go back to look at the previous gallery, I had to follow the arrows, walk all the way upstairs, all the way round the second floor of the gallery, then leave it by the exit, and then go round to the entrance, sanitise my hands, and start again from the beginning, just to see that one thing in the gallery. By the by, there was nobody else in the gallery except me and my wife, so it wasn't that it was crowded and we would be getting in people's way. I promise I'm not making this up. The museum was the one in the Welsh town of Brecon. In short, all the signs are that we're in the grip of a dangerous crisis which needs extraordinary measures to combat it. What does the government say about this? By which I mean the official figures released by the Office for National Statistics. Well, here's something which hasn't been widely reported. The mortality rate in Britain in April was the lowest ever recorded. The lowest since records began to be kept. Just savour that for a moment. Fewer people died in April than has ever been known before in that month in Britain. Here's the weird thing though, although this information is freely available from the government website, only one newspaper, the Daily Telegraph, thought it worth reporting. I give a link to the article above. What on earth is going on here? Fewer people died in a month than has ever before been known in Britain, and nobody seems to want to talk about it. This is, mind you, in the middle of what is still being described as a serious epidemic. Here's another odd thing. In Wales, where I spent the weekend, COVID is now the 18th leading cause of death. I give a link to this fascinating information above. Strokes, heart disease, dementia, flu, pneumonia and 13 other causes are more likely to kill you in Wales, which was where I had the trouble with that museum and the charity shop. Strange, no? Here are one or two other little things which viewers might be intrigued to hear. This is from the Guardian newspaper. The crisis has stretched the NHS almost to breaking point and sometimes beyond. In East Sussex, a refrigerated lorry is being used as a makeshift morgue after a hospital's mortuary filled up with patients. Eastbourne Hospital had to place 60 bodies in the lorry after the number of deaths was triple that of the same period last year. At Winchester's Royal County Hospital, Hampshire, the lack of nurses was so severe that medical chiefs ordered ex-employees to be contacted and asked to come back in. Admission doubled and the hospital asked all staff to cancel their leave. Many other hospitals are coping by cancelling all but the most urgent operations. The same week, the BBC had this to say. In Liverpool, hospitals have cancelled all non-emergency surgery to try and cope with the shortage of beds. Some patients have to stay overnight on trolleys while they wait for treatment. In London, all the capital's 275 intensive care beds are full. Health experts say that the outbreak has been made worse by the fact that vulnerable people, such as the elderly, have not been vaccinated. The Public Health Laboratory Service said the uptake was not what it should be in the high-risk groups. The knock-on effects are immense. Most trusts started to cancel routine planned surgery and thousands of patients were affected. Does any of this sound familiar? Of course it does, because it's literally word for word what we've been hearing over the last year or so. The only difference is that the quotations I just gave were not from last year at all. In fact, both of them are from January 2000, which is over 21 years ago. I give links to both the Guardian and the BBC pieces in the description to this video. I could easily read out exactly the same news stories going back decades before that, but I think the viewers might get the point. What is my point? It's a very simple one. Forget about causes of death for the moment and focus only on how many people are dying. Death certificates, especially those for old people, usually have at least 2 or 3 causes listed, so you can't always rely upon their accuracy. The actual number of people dying is lower than it has ever been since records began. The stories about overflowing mortuaries and shortage of intensive care beds are both regular features of news every few years. Unless we were constantly being told about it, very few of us would have even noticed the crisis. Old relatives have been dying, as they so often do over the winter, and now that the spring is here, there will be fewer people dying. That's how it is every year. I wonder if anybody else is noticing the things which I've mentioned today, or if I'm alone in spotting the similarities between the events of the last winter and seeing just how eerily they match those of past winters. By the way, in the last 24 hours, just 3 people had COVID mentioned on their death certificates.